All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today, we're going to be heading over to the Philippines.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, we're going to be uncovering a pretty fascinating aspect of their culture. We're going to be looking at, how Filipinos perceive uncircumcised men,
Okay.
especially among like the millennial and newer generations.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a deep dive into like cultural norms, beliefs, and kind of some relationship insights. All this is coming from an article titled "How Filipinos Perceive Uncircumcised Men: Cultural Norms, Beliefs, and Relationship Insights."
All right.
So are you ready to explore this with me?
Oh, absolutely. This is a topic that I think really reveals a lot about the interplay of like tradition and societal expectations and how mindsets are changing.
Yeah, for sure. And the article really dives into the historical significance of circumcision in the Philippines. They call it tuli over there. And it's not just like a medical procedure there, right?
Right, exactly. Tuli is like deeply woven into Filipino culture and identity. It's seen as a rite of passage, it's a symbolic transition into manhood, and the practice has been around for centuries. It's been influenced by both like pre-colonial traditions and the arrival of Islam in the 14th century.
Wow. Okay, so historically, how did this tradition kind of play out? Were there specific rituals or events that would surround it?
So historically, Tuli was often a communal event, kind of like a coming-of-age ceremony, marking a boy's entry into adulthood. And it was this collective experience that really cemented its significance within Filipino society.
Okay, so you could really picture how central this has been to them. But how common is circumcision in the Philippines like today?
Well, studies indicate that over 90% of Filipino men are circumcised, and that number alone, I think, really tells you how deeply ingrained this is.
Wow, that's 90%. Makes you wonder what's driving that high prevalence. Is it primarily a religious obligation?
While religion plays a part, I think societal pressure is probably a much stronger factor. It's about fitting in with societal norms and expectations, avoiding any potential like teasing or judgment. Generations of Filipinos have grown up with this expectation.
That's really interesting. So it's not even just a personal or family choice. It's about navigating societal perceptions. And the article also mentioned this thing called summer circumcision season. What is that?
Yeah, this is where the cultural significance really shines through. During this period, you'll find mass circumcision events happening all across the country, often organized by medical professionals and community organizations. It ensures access to safe procedures while still upholding this cultural tradition.
Oh, wow.
It's really fascinating.
Yeah, very interesting.
It's a fascinating way that they've adapted and modernized while also keeping those traditions alive.
Yeah, it really is like a blend of tradition and modernity coming together there. But knowing how deep-rooted this whole practice is, how do you think it kind of shapes Filipinos women's perceptions of uncircumcised men, particularly like those coming from cultures where it's less common?
Well, I think that's where individual experiences and beliefs come into play. For some Filipinas, especially those who were raised with these very deep-rooted norms, and an uncircumcised man might be perceived as unusual or different, simply because it's outside of their realm of experience.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how these differing norms, how they play out in like real life interactions and relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in relationships between Filipinos and men from cultures where circumcision isn't as prevalent. It can definitely be a point of cultural difference that can spark some interesting conversation.
Oh, for sure. And according to the article, millennial and newer generations of Filipinos, they seem to be more accepting of uncircumcised men. What do you think is driving this shift?
I think it reflects broader societal changes. Younger generations are exposed to more diverse perspectives through globalization and the internet. They're interacting with people from various backgrounds, they're absorbing different cultural norms, and they're also more likely to question traditional beliefs and to prioritize personal choice.
So basically, we're seeing a shift in what's considered the norm or even acceptable.
Yeah, it's not even just a Philippine thing, it's a conversation that's happening globally. As Filipinos interact more with people from different cultures, there's a growing understanding that practices vary widely. What's considered standard in one place might be different in another, and that's perfectly okay.
Yeah, and this acceptance of uncircumcised men, especially among these younger generations, is potentially a sign of those evolving cultural attitudes, right?
Precisely. It reminds us that cultural norms are not static. They evolve over time. They're influenced by factors like exposure to different cultures, changing values, and individual experiences.
It really makes you think about the implications for relationships between Filipinos and people from other cultures. Do you think these evolving perspectives could lead to even greater understanding and acceptance?
I think it has the potential to. As we become more open to different cultural practices, it fosters greater empathy and understanding in those intercultural relationships. Imagine a world where differences are celebrated rather than judged. Wouldn't that be something?
Absolutely. Embracing those differences is key. So for you, what stands out as like the most significant takeaway from our deep dive into Filipino culture and their perceptions on circumcision?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that culture is dynamic and ever evolving. Even deeply ingrained traditions like circumcision are subject to change, particularly as younger generations embrace new ideas and perspectives.
It's really interesting to see how these cultural shifts kind of play out.
Yeah.
And that evolution can lead to greater acceptance and understanding, not just within Filipino culture, but also in interactions with people from all over the world. It really highlights how interconnected we all are, even across those big cultural differences. But what does all this mean for our listener today, especially like if they're interested in Filipino culture or, maybe even thinking about relationships with Filipinos?
I think the key takeaway here is to approach these conversations with sensitivity and an open mind. Filipinas, like anyone else, they have diverse opinions and experiences. What one person considers really important might not matter as much to another.
Yeah, it's all about respecting those individual perspectives and being open to learning.
Exactly. And remember, cultural norms, they evolve over time. What might be typical for one generation could be different for the next, especially with younger generations who are exposed to so many diverse influences these days.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see how those cultural shifts play out in real time. If you're intrigued by what we've uncovered today and want to delve deeper into Filipino culture, make sure to visit our show's blog. We've got articles, personal stories, and resources there. That'll give you a much richer understanding of Filipino traditions and perspectives.
Yeah, it's a great way to expand your knowledge and connect with the vibrant Filipino community out there.
For sure. And as we wrap up our deep dive today, I'm left with a thought-provoking question for you, dear listener. How do you think these evolving perceptions of circumcision, particularly among those younger generations, how will that shape the future of relationships and cultural exchange between Filipinos and people from other cultures? It's a question worth pondering, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, definitely share your insights on our social media channels. Let's keep this conversation going.
Great idea. And on that note, a huge thank you for joining us on this deep dive. If you enjoyed exploring this topic with us today, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this episode with anyone who's interested in understanding those cultural nuances.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep embracing the beauty of human diversity.